Hey everybody, GeForce41 here with a very special playthrough video for you. This is finally my long-awaited playthrough of Commonwealth Country Club Newton. This course now exists as Newton Commonwealth Golf Course, which many people know because it's a highly played local public golf course. It's in Newton, which is a densely populated area right next to Brighton. And people play this, and it's a bit of a shooting gallery because it's very small. But it wasn't always that way. So I did this video because I had always wondered what the full course was like back in the old days. I knew they had sold off land at some point. I wasn't sure what land, where it was, what the course was like. But I did know that it was Donald Ross had a hand in the design of the course. So last winter, believe it or not, it was about a year ago, I went in and I started doing some research, and I was absolutely floored by what I found. This course went all the way to the Chandler Pond. As you can see off in the distance, that's Chandler Pond. And there's land that's been sold off pretty much in every direction except the west end of the course, the left end of the course, from my viewpoint. It has an amazing history. It is a course steeped in New England golf history. It had very famous people play here, Francis Ouimet, Sam Snead, and it even had a match between the legendary baseball icons Babe Ruth and Ty Cobb here for charity in 1941. So when I discovered the history and just what this course looked like from solely aerial photographs, I had to learn more and put something together for you. So I'm happy to do this to save this piece of New England golf history. I will talk more about the history as we go along, but I will also do a video with detailed history and how I put this course together. So I had very little to go on here, folks. I had a couple aerial photos. I had to use topographical maps because this course is on the side of the hill. As you can see it, it's 100 feet down to that first green. It's about a 200-foot hill this course is built on. And I had very few pictures. I'm talking 3 or 4. And then I had to use old Boston Globe news articles. I did not know the routing. I didn't know where tee boxes were. I have no idea how some of these lost holes, the green sloped. Had to use my knowledge of golf architecture, the landscape, and have some fun with it. So I hope you enjoy it. It was a lot of fun doing this, putting it together, but there's really a lot more to this course and this piece of land than meets the eye. So I'm happy to have brought it to you. I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions for me, let me know. But for now, let's get right to the golf. All right, everybody, here we are at the first tee. As you can see, the clubhouse is kind of behind you to the right. Very great location for spectating. Down the hill here, out into what was known as the corner. The corner was this first hole, the 14th hole, 15th hole, 16, 17, 18. And I'm going to give you a quick shot of the clubhouse. Now, there are lots of people who are better at clubhouses than I am. So on future versions, I hope to get a more accurate clubhouse, but I wanted something where there were spectators, because you can see in some of the news articles, there were spectators watching Ruth and Cobb tee off during their historic match in 1941. Sam Snead teed off from there, and then you can see there's a patio off to the right side of the clubhouse, our left, where people would hang out, have drinks, obviously, and watch the action. You can see almost all the action from the corner, and my contacts, my colleagues that grew up on this course told me it was quite the scene on Sunday afternoons. People go out for matches. Now, don't forget, this is a private country club, and just play the corner. They'd play 1, 14 through 18, and everybody would be up there watching, so you can kind of see all the action. So, and you can imagine what the bar was like on the inside. It must have been unbelievable. So, first hole, people do know this hole. It's the current 13th hole. The tee box was up further, and this green isn't the current green is not the original. This green would have been in the parking lot, about 25 yards back right of where it is now. But this is the bombs away down the hill hole that people know, and it's also famous. I'm going to spend some more time here. I'm not going to do this on every hole, but you know, it has a sign now: "Do not hit driver off the tee." Why? Because basically that the land off to the right is that was sold off and is all housing. The parking lot is behind this hole, and people would bomb away down the hill and bomb it into the parking lot. So, so people, this is a pretty famous hole around these parts because everybody knows this hole. It has water in front of the green now. It did not in the old days, so there was not water there. Why? Because it played 350 yards. That's why. But this, as you can see, is a big slope, and it was a ski slope back in the days in the winter. I hear that Wednesday and Thursday nights were the big nights. They had this lit up, had a lift, a ski slope, and it was one of the first places in New England, if not the first, to have artificial snow, man-made snow. So it was a big deal. This was a hopping place. It was big on the social scene. There was weddings here, the skiing thing going on. This was the place to be, folks. And Newton is a very big, very well-known town in the area. So this is a cool spot, and it still is. But this history, I think, is a little bit lost to people. So hopefully, I'm bringing a little bit back to you. Here's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to play the green tees, which are the forward tees, and these are the historically accurate tees. According to all the yardages I have from the globe, 6,240 yards. I'm going to play off the tee with nothing but 3 wood and down because nobody in those days hit a 300-yard titanium driver. So to give you a feel for how the course really plays, I'm playing green tees. I'm going to try to hit nothing but higher than 3 wood off the tee. I've got low winds just for the heck of it. I don't want the wind interfering too much. And kind of the natural wind, which was blowing off to the east in my version. This is kind of the afternoon. I've got the sun a little bit in the wrong direction, but no matter. So let's get on with the golf. Drivable for, in the game, but in the old days, people would hit about 250 yards. And you'd hit it down the hill, and this will be fun from the back tees with the normal driver, because it is drivable. See off to the left, there's a little bit of water. There's a ravine on the left side, really to capture the water coming down the hill, especially the snow runoff in the winter. Behind this green, you will see that is the lost 13th green, okay? And so there was no water in the old days. There's 3 bunkers surrounding it. And then the old days, after this, they added some bunkering as well. But the water was added to dissuade you from trying to drive this green. So this is the first hole location. Just going to flop one up there. And of course, I don't know the true slope of this green, but I have it kind of following the natural terrain. Pictures from the Ruth Cobb match. There is one picture of them on this green. And then one on the second green coming up, and probably because they had the paparazzi following them the first couple of holes, and then they got on out of there, right? So the second hole is a lost hole. It is, I want to call it a true lost hole because it's in the area of what is now the 14th hole. The 14th hole is the one by the current clubhouse on the right that you hit over basically the pond. It's a very, very short 4. You kind of hit like 5-iron or something to the fairway. Well, this hole played, are you ready for it? 420 odd yards. The green is up in where the housing is now. So this land off to the north side has been sold off, and there are condos up there. This tee box, I'm going to turn around so you can see the tee box, was back on the hill. So I mentioned there's a hill. There's a big hill going up to the 13th green, where that first green is, and it's a shared tee box with, you'll see later, 14. And off to the right is the barn and the swamp, as they called it. So that was where the maintenance stuff was, where all the workers got busy getting out there and kept the course in great shape. So I threw that in there. I probably didn't even do this hill justice. The hill no longer exists. They took that hill, filled in the swamp, and put the housing in. So... so there you have it. So this hole was another one I saw on the map on the aerial, and I couldn't believe it. So it's a huge uphill kind of hole from the low area. It goes way up there, about 20-30 feet. It had some huge fairway bunkers, especially this one off to the left. And I tried to measure everything as accurately as I could. So a lot of these distances are fairly accurate, and so are the elevation changes. I use topographical maps and the measuring tool. So, hopefully I got it right, but at least I'm getting in the ballpark. I know that. You might have seen this hole on my spline video when I was kind of doing this as a work in process. I did a video on splining, and I used this one and gave you a kind of sneak preview. But there's a cool picture of Cobb and Ruth putting on the screen and everybody surrounding the screen. And I took that picture as my visual to try to recreate the hole. It's kind of from back here. The tree's in the way a little. And I think I got it pretty good. So you can see off that's the beyond this hole is the area of what's the 18th hole now, but it's the lost 13th hole. It was much bigger, and that green goes way back past where the green is now by the clubhouse. And I'll show you all that, okay? So in the meantime, this is a lost green, a lost hole. Again, I was kind of, trying to do my best to get an accurate take on the green, following the landscape, etc. But a really, really cool hole. That absolutely, I mean, what a start to this course, huh? And again, I didn't know the rounding. Oh, get in. I didn't know the rounding at all, and I had to make a decision. What was the second hole? Could have been what was 14, but I didn't think so. And then it could have been this or the current first hole. But my intuition served me right. This indeed was the second hole, because what I found in the globe was not the actual routing, but I'm talking while I'm trying to putt. The whole sequence. In other words, the hole, the par, and the yardage. Which holes they were, I didn't know. But when I saw that the first time, it made no sense to me. Second hole was 420 yards, so it had to be this hole. Then the third and the fourth hole were both par 5s. Oh, it's a terrible putt. Hope I don't ruin my own video with terrible putting. But yeah, they were both par 5, so that kind of blew my mind and really confused me as to what the routing was. And you'll see in a second what happens. The next hole, this is in the area of the current, 15th hole, which is a long, I believe it plays as a par 4. But here's the unique, crazy thing about this hole. This hole, the current 15th green wasn't there. It played straight through to what's now the 16th green. Okay, and you can see the green, and I'll show you when we get up there a little closer. The par 3 that is the 16th hole currently wasn't a par 3. The green's still there, but this was one big long par 5 that played up into what is now the 16th green. So think of teeing off of 15 and you're playing straight into 16 green. Isn't that crazy? Not a lot of magic on the tee shot, fairly short, but there are some bigger hills over here that if you want to get to it in 2, you want to carry these hills. Okay, so it's uphill all the way. It's an uphill elevated approach shot, and it's a fun hole the way it is now. But can you imagine playing that into 16? Fun little note here. I had some help from some colleagues in my golf league who grew up here. And Sean and Bob, thank you if you're watching the video. But their dad played this course for 80 years. In fact, has a plaque in his memory beyond the current 5th hole, which is the 9th hole in this version. And he caddied here, worked here, and they told me a great story where he caddied for Francis Ouimet on this hole. And Francis had about 160 yards going into this hole, something like that, on his third shot. Asked their dad what club to hit, and he said club up 1, 6-iron, because it's uphill. And Francis said, "You sure?" And he said, "Yep." And damned if he didn't drop the shot, drained it right in the hole. So that's a pretty cool story. So thanks, gentlemen, if you're watching, for sharing that with me. So obviously this is going to be reachable for most of you, unless we have some wind in the face. But it's going to be a challenge if you miss that fairway. So you'll recognize this green if you know the course. And as I said, I didn't show it to you. My bad. It plays, the green is the 16th green as par 3. You see behind me, that's the Elliott Memorial. I stuck that in there. I don't know if it was visible back in those days, but it is off in the trees over there, very close to the course. You can look that one up. It is still there today. So now the rounding, you're saying, where did we go now? Well, you have to loop around what is the current 17th tee and the current 2nd green, if you know the course. In this version, in the old version, that is the 12th hole tee box and the 7th green. Okay, so hope I have it straight. So this is basically now you're playing what is the 8th hole currently. It played as the 4th hole. You had a fillet 2, loop around the back of those 2 holes on the very west end of the course, and come to what is now the 8th tee. And you can see the buildings in the distance. I added that because if you know this hole, it's a very pretty tee shot, probably the prettiest tee shot, other than maybe the par 3, 7th, which plays as 11 here, in the whole course. So I always love this tee shot. Now you've got the side of the hill coming in play, and you got this kind of mound thing. That's all there today. This hole is pretty much as it is today. You got to kind of hit the side of the hill, and you're going to have a side hill lie on most of this, unless you get it really down on that left side. So that little part, that rough that juts out, you're going to have to navigate that if you're hitting with the driver. And you can see the green drops off to the side, and you've got the entrance up here, etc. So this hole exists pretty much as is today. Obviously playing a little short for today's standards, but still a really good hole, good golf hole. Tried to add some trees. Believe it or not, there was not a lot of trees and foliage from the pictures I looked at in the old days. So I kind of met it a happy medium just to kind of spruce it up. There's a lot of trees. It's heavily wooded these days. But kind of, did a little handiwork and thought through it, and it's kind of hard to tell from the aerials exactly. All right, 5th hole is now the current 9th hole, and you'll recognize this in a second. There you go, the downhill par 3, that is the 9th hole. I played about $190, $197 in the day. There's a tee box now behind it, it's about 210. That's where the my blue tees are, okay? This bunker in the front looked a little odd shaped in the pictures. I wasn't sure if that was a shadow or not, but I made it look a little different, a little interesting. Could have been the shadows playing a trick on me, but there's a big bunker off to the front right. There is a bunker there. It's not as big. And these 2 bunkers have always been there. They're still there. And this green is there. It's a very smallish green. And I hope I have this one fairly accurate. I didn't have any actual green maps of the greens that exist today. I just, from knowledge of the course and going there and taking a few pictures myself, that's how I worked it. What you can see behind me, I meant to show that to you. Let's see if I can do it. Please hold. Okay, you can see that little tee box I put there. That's not an actual playable tee box in this game. That's where the first tee box is today. So I put a bench and a tee box there just for reference sake. So the clubhouse today is behind where that tee box is. Okay, so just for reference point, there's the first green off to the right, and then right behind that tee box will be where the clubhouse is. Okay, so just for perspective, that's where the clubhouse and 18 and all that was, and there was nothing there. Why? Because the clubhouse was on the top of the hill. But just so you know, that's where it was at, and when we go up 13, I'll point it out again. All right. A little up and down here. So that's the first hole off in the distance there, right back down the hill. Oh, my short game is brutal. Get in. There you go. Just your routine par. So now we're in familiar territory a little bit. Now this is the first hole we just pointed out. What is now the first hole, it was the 6th hole back in the day. And there you see that tee box. Let me go back for you. Off to the left, there's that tee box. That's where the tee box is today. This hole played about 340 yards. This is what blew my mind. When I saw the Globe articles that listed the hole distances, I said, 340? What hole is that? Because this hole plays about 270 right now. Well, that's because the tee box was back in the trees behind the first green. It's the only place for it. There's no way to make it 340 yards because there you can see where the current first tee is, right there. If you went back from that 270 to make it 340, you'd be on the first hole. So there's only one place for it to be, and that's there, right? Because otherwise they're on the first hole. And then I looked, and lo and behold, When I had a picture of the 13th hole, I saw in the distance 4 guys up on that hill looking this way. And then I got confirmation from my contacts, my friends from a regular golf league, that it indeed was behind where the clubhouse is today. So that's where the clubhouse would be, kind of where that arrow is. And the tee box was way back there up in those trees. Played 340. Well, what does that do? Could you hit it with, driver and a wind behind your back in the game? Yeah. But look at this. There's rough in front of the green. And I had a question, was there rough or not? Because there isn't any rough today, but I swear to God, in those overheads, it looked like there was rough there. And I did confirm, thank you, Sean. Sean confirmed for me that in the day he used to take care of this hole with the head greenskeeper, and they left this rough nice and thick and nasty on purpose to make it hard to drive the green. And it was very thick around the sides of the holes and up in front of it. So it was thick and nasty to make it a little more challenge if you really want to drive the green. So I left it there. I guessed that it was there, and sure enough, it is there for just that reason that I left it in. Make this hole a little bit more challenging. You got to think about it. But that's a very interesting take on this hole because there's definitely no rough. It's a very short 270, yard hole to start on the public course. It's the first hole, as I've said, and not much challenge to it currently. But this makes it a pretty interesting hole, if you ask me. Behind it is the 12th green, which plays now as the 17th. Put a little slope in this green. It's probably a little flatter in real life than this. But I think you all can handle it. All right, so that's the 6th hole. What you all know is the first hole these days. And then where do you go? Well, the 7th hole is indeed what plays as the 2nd hole. This I think is one of the best holes on the course. Probably the hardest, if you ask me. This is the par 5 that plays up the hill. There's a creek going across the hole. And certainly if you have driver, you're going to actually play with this creek. From the back, obviously these tees, I pulled them way back for the blues. But, the challenge of this hole in real life is up the hill. And again, that you'll take a look at the green, you'll see what I mean. And you've got the trees off to the right, the creek, the trees on the left. If you pull one, this one's always giving me fits. So you got to hit a nice little maybe draw off the tee here. About 250, 260. And you're in great shape. I left the hazard stakes in there just for effect. I don't know if they were there in the 40s and the 50s. But you can see you're up the hill to a smallish green. And again, there's no run up to the green, right, at all. The fairway ends. It's truncated just before the hill. There's a smallish bunker off to the right. Still, you can see this bunker off to the left. There's no bunker there now. You can see the depression where it was. So you got 2 bunkers in the front of the green. It's all carry up there, folks, and it's a big hill. And again, these elevation changes are accurate within about 10 feet, 5 to 10 feet. Learn to use a topographical map. It's not hard once you figure it out. But the ponds were kind of ground zero, level 0, and it's 50 feet above sea level in reality. And so everything worked off of that. But great hole in real life. Still there today. You can play this one as is. Okay. Off to the next one. It's the par 3. So again, this is a hole that's still there. You can play this one as is. This is the 3rd hole. You can see some housing in this version, as I think you probably could in the old days. Everything's kind of grown in now. But there's that kind of tear-shaped green. Literally a tear-shaped T-E-A-R, but there's 2 tiers to it. As is. I think this green was as is today. There was nothing much different at all that I can see in any of the photos. And there's that big bunker in the front. The stream runs in here. The stream was very hard to do because the elevation changes. So this one is another one that is there today. You can play this one today. Usually about a 5-iron, $180, $185 when I'm playing it. Move the tees back for the blues for a challenge. So the blue tees are just an added challenge. You know, I just pull them back. There's nothing unusual about them. Just not the historical numbers I saw on the globe. Another terrible chip. You can speed the greens up if you want to challenge. I would say add some winds, firm it up. They're only at 145. I don't want to overdo it. They're kind of small screens. I wanted to add some slope for you. Okay, now where do we go? Well, the next hole in real life that you know is 4 didn't exist. That was stuck in the corner. That's an addition because they lost a bunch of holes. I knew, gee, when I didn't know anything about golf architecture, I knew that hole couldn't have been an original. That was just stuck in there in the corner. So in the old days, I used to have a mat instead of a grass tee box, like a driving range mat. That hole wasn't there, of course. So now you walk across, and you are at what is the current 5th hole. Okay? And this was the 9th hole. Why? Because it makes sense. It goes back to where the clubhouse was. So don't forget the clubhouse was at the top of the hill by 1. So there you go. So this is the... I'm sorry. Yes, this is the current 5th hole. Okay. Side of the hill, very similar to 8 with that kind of thing, that fairway semicircle jutting out. There's a couple of those. And it's pretty fun to be able to bomb one off the tee on this one, because this one gives me fits too. And you see the off to the right is the hill for what is now 6, and that was 10 back in the day. So you can see that totally makes sense. This goes back to the clubhouse that this would be a 9th hole. Okay, that bunker wasn't there. I'm sorry, that bunker is not there today. It was there back in the day. And there's a smallish green into what is now the 5th hole. And there are trees, and I'm going to put an arrow here in the video. The tee box for the current 6th hole is right off there, off to the side, right? And that's why there's a big mesh net there, kind of a mesh monster. Well, that's because the land was sold off to the left here, and the tee box was pushed up. And we'll talk about that more on the next hole, but that's why this is kind of gets the shooting gallery nickname to it, because you've got that tee box right there. Well, you can see that's totally in play. It wasn't in play back in the old days, and you'll see more of why on the next hole. Yeah, much more room. The routing actually made sense, other than that one quirky loop. But this green is here today, so this is another hole. So basically the front 9 is almost intact. And a lot of this is playable, but with more room and some bigger holes, right? So this is a really interesting hole. So this is 10. This exists as 6 today. And like I said, I'll kind of go over here. Oh, that's not going to work. The tee box is somewhere over here today, okay? They built the tee box. This land is all gone. It's all housing. And so you tee off from here, and you'll see when you get down to the green that is there today was not the original. This is the green that's kind of the potato chip wavy green today. We'll go down here. 250, okay? There's the old green. The original green, this is kind of on the left side of the front of the fairway. The current green is off to the right beyond where those bunkers are a little bit. And that was done because I guess balls were getting hit into housing and things like that. And I don't know of any other good reason, but that green that exists today was put in about 1995. So that is not an original by any means at all. Now you're going to see what this does to it. So the green was off to the right there. Well, look what it does to this hole. Having the tee in the proper place and the green in the proper place, you really got to hook one around this corner, this curve here. And you've got this little space here, which is a safe tee shot into a flat piece of land to hit a nice approach up to the green. Sorry. right? That's kind of where you want to be, especially if you're your average normal golfer like we are. You'd probably want to be there. Now, if you can hit a 3-wood, or in this game a drive or whatever, but you really got to hook one around, and all this land takes you down in here. It still does today. If you know this hole off, you block one right, you're heading into that tree line there, which is bordering on the what we know as 5, but in the old days it was 9, as we just saw. So if you're off to the right, you're down in this valley here with, they had 2 bunkers down there in the old days. So this is a really interesting, cool hole. So when you play it, you'll see it, you'll get it, and you'll see how it's very clever. I'm just going to kind of draw one around, and you see how this hole makes sense, especially once you play it. You know, the way it plays today is this 270-yard hole that's kind of straight into this crazy green. Not sure whose idea that was, but that green is not an original. Donald Ross had nothing to do with it. Okay, there's very, very pretty housing off to the left these days. This house has been there quite some time. I do believe I know somebody from our golf league that lives in one of those houses just off this fairway. And there you go. So now we're heading into another hole. This hole is a gem, and it is there today as it stands. This is probably the gem of the whole course. This is the 11th hole. It is the current 7th hole. It's a downhill par 3 with the 3 bunkers in front. It's a bit of an Eden hole with water in front. But this is, if you ask me, this is a Ross. This is a Ross original. It fits right into his modus operandi, so to speak, the kind of medium length downhill 3. He loved downhill par 3s, and it's kind of got an Eden-esque quality with the 3 bunkers fronting it. Now the bunkers, they were much bigger in the day. I can definitely see that in the aerials. The bunkers are there today, but they're all a little smaller. It's kind of like 3 circular greens. I'm sorry, 3 circular bunkers in front. There's a stream in front. I even put this little tower thingy there. I put that in there for effect. And this one's there today, and it's just an absolute gem to play. So another hole that exists today that to me is the handiwork of Mr. Ross. So the quick history, it started as a 9-hole course in the late 1800s. Ross came in about 1920 and 23 and expanded it to 18 holes. The full extent of the course was not expanded until 1941. So they didn't own all the land until 41. And that's why this version is based on the course from 41 to the late 50s. Basically in its full expansion, its full capacity. Alright. So now the routing gets a little funky again. Remember that little loop we did on the front? Where we went from 3 over to 4. You had to go around 12 and 7. Well, now you had to do that in the opposite. You had to go back around 7 to 12. So the hole you are looking at is the current 17th. Okay? So it played as 12, and that distance of 420 yards that I have on the card is accurate. I said, how can that be? The tee box had to be back. Well, it might have been back in the houses because there was no house behind this tee box. It did say 420 yards numerous times in the globe. So, hey, I made it 420. It's back. The current tee is probably up where that tee box is up there. That's why I put that there, even though I didn't put a tee box in. Okay? But damned if it doesn't say 420 yards. And if you look at the aerials, there was nothing there. There's no housing, no trees. It damn well could have had a tee box back into where beyond the tee box that there is today, into where there is housing now. Had it been. So that's what, kind of blew me away. All these yardages were just way different than I thought because the course plays very short. This also has a beautiful kind of scenery to it. There's this big water thing. I think it's just a reservoir for the course, and it's water off to the right. There was no water there in the day. So this is where the stream from the pond comes in, the aqueduct. That is called Strong's Pond there. That's in the course. And Chandler Pond is the huge pond in the distance, just so everybody knows. And why was it Strong in Chandler's Pond? Well, ice. They're man-made. Hopefully I get that in the historical video. The ponds are man-made and they're for ice production back in the old days. Believe it or not. And those were obviously the owners of the companies. Excuse me, I need a little bit of water. Doing a lot of talking. Okay, now, so this is, now we kind of get back into the lost hole category. This hole today exists as 18, but with the extension of the green. So here are the cool features of this one. You do know this today as a forced carry off the tee for 18. There's that little kind of island fairway over here. It's not really an island, but that kind of separate fairway. That was there. That's been there for a long time. That's the second hole we showed you, remember? And damned if that isn't there, in case you don't want to make or can't make that fourth carry of about 220, 230 yards. It's still today is a pretty decent carry. I had trouble carrying it into the wind earlier this year when I played. And so that's there in case you want to take the short way out off the tee. But you could see the pond was off to the left. It was much bigger than it is today. There's the 5 bunkers off to the right, which you can see in the photos. And then, excuse me, there's the green off in the distance, way beyond, across the street and into where there's housing now. So if you remember, we talked that there's the original, the current first tee off to the right. And the clubhouse will be there in front of the 6th tee box. And so the green is somewhere in front of the clubhouse today, so it plays much shorter. Well, this was the green that went up the hill, and we'll talk about that as I hit. Gotta remember, go back to 3-wood for you. Plenty of room, very flat fairway. The interesting thing was the second shot in. So we talked about the hill. There's the barn off to the left, which is in what was called the swamp. And some cool bunkering. Again, I think I got this pretty accurate. About 23 feet up. That was about a 30-foot hill. So that's pretty good. And then the hill was over here. And I was actually told this bunker was actually in the... I got to make that hill a little bigger in the following version. Probably more of a hill over here than I made. But I'd already made the course when I kind of got that information. So... again, if anybody's listening has got pictures of all this stuff, let me know, because there is really nothing as far as pictures to work on here. And certainly with the new game around the corner, I'm going to update this the best I can. If I get feedback, photos and pictures from people. What a beautiful green, though. Kind of had that, you know, squarish shape, not really a circle, you know, a rectangle with the squared corners. And you can see... you know, this went beyond where the first tee box is. I'm sorry, the 6th tee box, which is 1 now. And there's the clubhouse and the big hill that we teed off on the start. Okay? So you can see what a scenic, pretty course this was. There's a lot of golf and play in view from various points in the course. Championships were held here. May played championships here. He won championships here. State championships, charity tournaments. It was a big deal. So now we're back into the lost hole territory, right? So this was a lost green. And now on 15, a totally lost hole, one that blew my mind. This is the one that went down, that goes down to Chandler Pond. So we're in the shared tee box with 2, which we saw, and there's the pond off to the left. And damned if this course doesn't go down to Chandler Pond. And so I threw that in there. How accurate it is, I don't know. It's not particularly complicated. I got the bunkering in the right spots. See, there's 2 bunkers out here, which basically is, to me, it says if you were going to, especially from the back tees, throw one out there to the right just to be safe, you know, that's guarding you from bombing one out here and over here by the 15th hole. So that actually makes sense from a design standpoint. Probably drivable for most of you from the blue tees even, if you got some wind. But again, I'm trying to play this as a normal human being would have, with wood clubs, no Pro V1s, no titanium. And you can see the housing there off to the side. That's Lake Street. And some cool stuff. So again, this pond was certainly full of ice skaters in the winter. Found some cool pictures of that. Now this is in what is now Brighton, right? This piece of land, right? So this is gone. It's all housing. And so Brighton's a part of Boston proper, so it is part of the city. So there are big buildings, etc. Off in the distance, especially these days. So wrapping around that green back here was a tee box for 15, which is a classic. Now let me just give you the reference. There's the hole we just played, and the pond, and then there's the tee box back there, okay? This is a completely lost hole. Classic New England dogleg, right? Shortish kind of 4. You got to put it in the right spot in that fairway. Driver is going to leave you in trouble. Looks to me like there was some sort of bunker out there, which makes sense to me. So you don't just blast one past the dogleg. Hard to tell, but I put it in there for, what's and giggles. But also as a little bit of a deterrent on its own. I hope these trees are not clearable. I didn't mean for them to be clearable, but you might want to pull a Bryson and go over them, especially from the back tees. But you really want to be out here. And you can imagine today the challenge of this hole was, well, you don't want to risk the corner too much and being blocked out or being left in those trees. But the more you hit it out here, the farther that approach is going to be up the hill to that elevated green. We'll look at the green in a second. Throw a little iron down there. That should be sitting pretty. But there you see this green. Again, a completely lost green with some very interesting bunkering. It was really cool to see on the overheads. And it's about 25 feet up. So, truncated fairway, right? So there's no fairway run up here. This is all carry up the hill. Severely sloped from back to front. So this was a challenge. I think it's a simple little short hole. But the key here is positioning off the tee and then getting your approach shot up the hill and accurate. And if you're off that green at all, you've got bunkers galore surrounding the thing. So again, this will be fun if you want to, play from the back tees and give it a little bit of speed on the greens. It should be a real fun challenge. So that's the 15th. Then you can see down to the pond. Pretty shot. Very, very pretty. You can't see that today. It's just nothing, This is just all housing now. All right, this is another one that just blew my mind. This is a lost par 3 down the hill. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. I saw this beautiful green just sitting here. There's the first green over there, right? And when I looked at the overhead, there was just this green in the middle of nowhere. And I couldn't figure out what it was because of these trees back here. It looks like that was all trees. I didn't realize there was a tee box up there. So I said, where are you approaching that green from? I didn't know if it was a practice green or something. Then I realized, I put 2 and 2 together. There indeed was a tee box. And that was a forced carry over some hilly, rocky, roughy, kind of brushy terrain. So a very New England kind of par 3. Elevated green. You can see just in the shadows and the overheads how this was just like a platform green with this funky shape and some really funky bunkering. Again, a classic Ross, if you ask me. And really fun hole to play and to try to build. Again, I didn't have much in terms of the actual slope. From the gentleman I talked to, this wasn't a very sloped green, fairly flattish. Have it sloping to the pond. Make your greens look natural, right, everybody? If only somebody would do a video on how to make your greens look natural. Already been done by yours truly. There we go. All right, so great hole. Worth the price of admission if you ask me. Now it gets a little interesting here, folks. We're going to 17. Well, does this exist today? Sort of. So this hole is basically where 10 and 11 is today. They took this 17th hole and made it 2 holes. So this tee box is close to where the 10th tee box is today. Guess what? They stuck a green in the middle of this fairway and then put a tee box next to it. Or remember, it's back to the left. You have to go up to the 10th green and then back off to the left. And basically that 11th tee box is close to where the 16th tee box that you just played was originally. So it's 2 holes today. That green is still there. I'm pretty sure it's that same green. I couldn't tell. There's some overheads that look like it could have moved about 20 yards. I don't think so. So I think that green is pretty much as is today. It's 2 holes. Now this tee box is way up. I got the yardage in the globe. It said about 450 or 60 or something like that. And so I put a tee box way back to play it more towards, I think, 490 to make it a little bit more challenging from the back tees. And you're going to have to make a decision with this thing. But here it's pretty easy just to go up to the hill and go over it. It'll play much more interesting from the blue tees. The key is going to be carrying that or getting stuck if you don't. Again, all uphill. It's severely uphill. Even today, you look at it, it is way up the hill. I'm not even sure I did it justice. I mean, I used the topos, but if you see it today, especially down, I think the fairway's probably off to the left a little bit. It's way up the hill. I mean, it is crazy uphill. No bunker off to the left there now, but I believe there was one in the old days, so I threw it in. Why not? Not a ton going on in the green, but really kind of challenging hole, as you can imagine, playing the full length, right? There's simple holes these days. Still a bit of a challenge with the elevation changes, right? Okay, 18, wrapping it up by the clubhouse. This is another interesting one. Lost hole. There is a par 3 there these days. Tee box is about the same spot, but plays as the current 12th, right? Do I have that right? Yes, 12. But this green is up in where the housing is now. So this would be basically beyond the tennis courts into the housing in their courtyard. The tennis courts are basically somewhere around here where this flat thing is. And this big hill, you can still see this thing today. There's a big hill there with rocks on it. So just to give you your frame of reference, there was this, I don't know what this is. Looks like in all these pictures, there's this cut out of fairway. I don't know if that was just for hanging out, for award ceremonies, what it was. So I threw it in there, but that also kind of tells you kind of about where the tennis courts are now. And the other green is off here somewhere. But this is the 18th. Interesting bunkering. 3 bunker kind of carry thing. That was very odd to see in the overheads, but I put them in. Again, Ross has done that in a few courses, French Lick, I believe, etc. And then I put some crowd. I put the crowd in there on the deck, partying, watching the action. Because like I said, people in the old days used to hang out and watch the action coming in around the corner, or playing the corner, as they called it, as I described to you before. So it was quite the scene back in the day. Very unique shaped green, very clear in some of the pictures, though. And this green didn't last long. It didn't last the end of the 50s. Excuse me. They were changing this in the late 50s, 58, 59, something like that. But it was definitely much different. Oh, and he whiffs. But look at the view. Look at the view from this green. Just a pretty, pretty course. Makes total sense. You have a beautiful clubhouse at the top of this 200-foot hill overlooking the pond. It must have been very, very scenic and quite a sight to behold. So there it is, folks. That is Commonwealth Country Club Newton. Lost to the ages, most of it, but certainly still playable, a lot of it. If you haven't played it, get it out there and, think of that course with a little bit of a new mindset, right? Because people kind of look at it as, it's just Newton Commonwealth. Well, it was quite the course in the day, and I hope I did it justice. But it's been a pleasure bringing you this little piece of New England golf history and New England history and Newton history, because I hold all 3 of those dear to my heart. So Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, let me know. And bye for now, but thank you so much for watching this special video. Thank you.